And I'm like, wow, if an 80-year-old guy who only previously ever had a flip phone can tell me that I'm changing his life, then there's work for me to do here. It's just about reprioritising your resources and your time to think more about how I can run a more efficient operation. And, the feedback we get from ranchers is just, why didn't I do this 10 years ago? How do you manage the business if you don't know if you could have a flood 1 month and a drought 3 months later? I'm sort of beginning to use this. We know what a flash flood is. I'm beginning to think we need to talk about flash droughts, things that happen, the volatility of weather. It's like weather whiplash.
Welcome back to the Wealthy Cowboy Show. I'm excited today. This episode is going to kind of merge ranching, business, entrepreneurship, and technology also. So I'm excited about it. We got Andrew Coppin on, and you're fixing to see he talks a little bit different than us. So, but I'm glad to have you on here and hear your story.
No, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah. So obviously you're not from here, but you're now based in Fort Worth, Texas. But tell us. Well, we start with background. Tell us your story. I know talking just a little bit before this and hearing, I know it's going to be very interesting. So kind of tell us how you grew up.
Yeah, well, I grew up in Western Australia, in a city called Perth. It's like one of the remote cities on the planet. So my father had farming and ranching operations in that part of the world, and sort of, when I wasn't in the city at school, I was, on a farm or on a ranch somewhere.
Is that what is the country like? Is that the mountains or the desert kind of?
We don't really have mountains in the same aspect as the US do. The southern corner of Western Australia is sort of more rainforest and pretty fertile, and then the northern region where I spent a lot of time was called the Kimberley. That's really, really rugged, more akin to sort of Arizona type landscapes, big mountains, big valleys, and pretty rugged. And that's where, the family had some ranching operations up there. And I went to school there, spent a lot of time in and around ranching, farming. And then, I went to university in Western Australia, and then I ended up going into work in the stock market for about 20 years. So,
what drove you to that instead of like wanting to go back to the ranching side of things and go into the city?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we'd sort of, the family had interest in agriculture, and then through the 80s and things, there was a lot of economic turmoil, and Dad had options about whether he was going to stay in or get out of ranching, and sort of got out of it. I was sort of there, sort of being brought on to as a potential to run that business, and then all of a sudden it wasn't there.
Yeah.
And I'd also always had an interest in the stock market and investment, and decided that that was where I would go. And I'd run a couple of small businesses, started some business things in my late teens and early 20s. And then, at 24, I found my way into the stock market, and that's what I did for the next 20 years of my life. Worked all around the world, invested a lot of money for a lot of wealthy people, and, it was a great part of my, career.
Mm-hmm.
And 10 years ago, I just decided, to take an alternate path, and that led me back into agriculture and technology. So, it was interesting.
Yeah. Before we get too far into all that, I want to go back to, just because I'm just so curious, because I imagine just how different it is. What was like ranch life for you as a kid, and kind of how you said it? It seems like, I know a lot of like people I know in more remote areas of the ranching world, West Texas and stuff like that. It's kind of like a double life, like that you go live in town and go to school, and then like any other time in the summertime or the weekends, you're out on the ranch. But when you're in, it's kind of like living two lives. Was that kind of how that was for you? Or
yeah, well, I mean, obviously ranch life in Australia is remote. It's a big country. You think Australia is the same size, geographic size as the United States, ex-Alaska. and yet there's only 27 million people there. And what have we got here in Texas, like 34 million or something? So you've got huge, vast areas. It's not unusual for people growing up in the country to have, 200 or 300 miles to the nearest gas station, and it could be, many more than that to get to the local town. A lot of the kids that grew up in those remote areas were doing School of the Air, so your whole schooling and everything was actually, over the radio. And at that point, there wasn't internet or streaming video. I didn't do that. I went to school in the city. But yeah, all of our vacations, you'd be back, you'd be on the farm or you'd be going up to the ranch. And just remote, totally different lifestyle. And back then in the sort of 80s and 90s, all the work was done on horses. Helicopters and heli mustering, as we call it in Australia, had just sort of started. Ranching was a pretty tough business to be in that part of the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it was. I know now you see videos of them gathering stuff on dirt bikes and dune buggies and stuff like that. But back then y'all were mainly horses.
Yeah, there's a lot of areas in Australia where bikes and things just still don't cut it. So I would say across the vast majority of the northern beef cattle industry, it's still about horses and helicopters. In the southern areas where we have the sort of softer cattle, black cattle and Hereford and others, that's motorbikes and, but the northern beef area, which is more eared cattle and Brahman and things, and the big properties. No one would think twice about a 1 million acre property over there. Just go, yes, of course, that's going to happen. So, whereas they're a bit harder to find here. So yeah, it's a big landscape. There's not a lot of micromanagement of the herds. You're managing genetics over a longer period of time. The bulls are constantly out in the pasture, and you might muster, which is gathering here, a couple of times a year through the sort of June to September period, and you'll do different sections of the property over the course of that year.
And was it like, how did you like that? Was it like pretty wild times of like as a young kid going and getting to do stuff like that?
Yeah, well, going out and riding horses and, from when you're in the city at school every day and then, you're suddenly in the middle of nowhere riding horses and, beautiful landscape, but tough, I have a lot of fond memories about it. It was certainly an educational experience. But, as life goes, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today if I didn't do those times. But, we had some great times and met some really interesting people. That part of Northern Australia is full of characters and, people with, big personalities and big life stories, because surviving out there and in that part of the world, was and even is to this day, it's still a very remote place to be, and it requires a special sort of person. But yeah, lots of fond memories. Sometimes we'd have to take 4,000 or 5,000 head of cattle from one end of the property to the other. That'd take 4 or 5 days, and it'd just all be happening on horseback, and sleeping under the stars at night with the bedroll and a fire, and 4 a.m. you're up again and back at it, and you go all day until the sun goes down, and that was sort of, how it worked.
Yeah, pretty old timey.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. And I think it also like the point of just a lot of people that have been on here to be able to be raised in, a challenging environment where you have a lot of responsibility and stuff like that as a young kid. And then no matter what you do, like you went to be we'd call it a Wall Street guy, a stock market guy, or so many people I see that like go into business and then wear a suit and tie, but they have all that knowledge of actual survival and responsibility and integrity and all that. It's cool to see, it kind of crosses over.
Yeah. Look, at the time as a teenager, I was probably cussing my old man for, sending me to the middle of nowhere. He was trying to keep me away from, the vices of the city. But But in hindsight, it was the greatest thing that ever happened in my life. Great experience. I think a lot of, we call it being a jackaroo in Australia when you're out, like a day worker in a cattle ranch. I think, it's a great thing for kids to do. And, we should mandate that all kids have to go and work it out because it's really gets you in touch with what life's all about and where your food comes from and, what hard work's all about. So, at the time, of course, I didn't fully appreciate it. Like I didn't really fully appreciate the criticality of water. It wasn't my problem to own. I was just there trying to help manage it and fix it. And now, of course, I have a lot greater appreciation, again, that I would not have if I hadn't had that experience.
Right. So when you went to college and like kind of, did you know exactly, were you like, I want to be a stockbroker and kind of ready to move from that, go into the city and explore that side of the world?
I'd always had an interest in it. And back in the 80s, the stock market was booming, pre the 87 crash. There was a lot going on, and it was an area of interest to me. But I didn't really, someone recommended that I should do it because I knew a lot of people and I knew a lot about investment in the stock market for a relatively young person. So I sort of found my way into that. I remember they threw me a phone book, which is, new novel these days to think that phone numbers were actually in a book. And they said, there's a desk, there's a phone. You've got 6 months to work it out. If you're not, you're out. And obviously things went reasonably well. I progressed my career in that space really well and ended up, being the number one business writer in that firm. And then, subsequently, 10 years later ended up going into management. And 10 years after that was running a multi-billion dollar, funds management group. Mm-hmm. So I sort of started at the bottom and finished at the top. And it was a great experience. And I got to work all around the world. I had a great time, I guess. At the end of that career, that part of my career, I'd done what you could do, and I was probably a bit jaded about it. Yeah. And whilst it was great financially, it probably wasn't the best thing for humanity. And I sort of went looking for what else could I do that would be
bigger impact.
Yeah, bigger impact, and what legacy was I going to leave, and what else could I do after that career?
What? Kind of starting from the bottom there, I had a Wall Street guy on that's in the cutting horses now, and that's kind of was his dream the whole time. But it just reminded me of starting with that phone book at your desk, and it was like sink or swim because he's the same way. He had an internship and same deal. He had the lowest job to start cold calling all these people. What was that like? Was that, I mean, like you said, obviously you figured it out and you had some success, but were you immediately pretty good, or was it a struggle for you kind of?
Oh, yeah, like anything. I mean, the first few years was pretty hard work, but I had a good network because previously I'd started a business that was actually in the marine field, in boat management. We ran a whole bunch of boats, started off with cleaning and then ended up doing engineering and catering and skippers and crew and everything. So I started that business when I was 21 and sold it when I was 23, but I knew a lot of people from that world. And so I leveraged my network and, but still getting cold calling people you didn't know was pretty tough. So, but I love the market and I love sales. And being passionate about something, to me, it was never really work. It was just, it was a project and it was exciting. And, I've never really felt like I've ever really been working as in doing something I didn't want to be doing.
Right. Have you always been kind of entrepreneurial? Like you started that business, you got your own business now, and you've always just kind of had that knack about you?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I think I got it fairly and squarely inherited that one from my father. He was a, serial entrepreneur, did different things over the years. I mean, his core business was in insurance, but then he was in hospitality and ranching and, did different things. So, yeah, I just inherited a spirit to want to go and explore things and to, build things. And, it's something I've always aspired to do. I'm not a very good employee,
What about the stock trading over there? It's got to be different than here. Are y'all trading all the different markets globally? Do y'all have your own Australian market you trade? Like, what did that look like? DX Trailer Sales is based out of Lubbock, Texas, and it's definitely not just a trailer dealership. If you are involved in the Western way of life, and if you're listening to this show, you probably are, they have something you need. From trailers for a day working cowboy to a full-time cattle hauler to hay trailers for a farmer or rancher to arena drags, rope and chutes, and feeders for the rodeo cowboy or cowgirl. They also deal in every kind of hay any of your animals could ever need. Literally anything you need for farming, ranching, or rodeoing, they have something for you. And it's going to be at a super affordable price. Besides all that, everyone you deal with there is super friendly and helpful. We just got new custom flatbeds built for our pickups, and I also got probably the coolest trailer you've ever seen built. And you can stay tuned for a video we're going to do, and it's going to show all of that and some more of their products also. So check out DX Trailer Sales on Facebook or dxtrailers.com.
Well, back in the early days, it was pretty antiquated because we still had, chalkboards and everyone was writing things up. In fact, I remember you could arbitrage share prices from one side of the country to the other because we only had landlines, so people would ring up and say, what's the price of BHP in Sydney? And it could be different in Perth, and you could buy in one market and sell in another. And the terms of trade were, T plus whenever you wanted to pay sort of thing. Obviously, these days, everything's happening within milliseconds and, arbitrage is all happening by, supercomputers and, algorithmic traders. So I saw it evolve a lot over the 20 years I was in that business, from, the real more traditional stockbroking, buying and selling shares to really being in a more funds management role, and asset allocating to people. 15 years through that career, my boss at the time, who was a massive agriculture guy, Colin Bell, in Australia, sort of said, you're pretty damn good at this, but I'd love you to come and get into management. And I thought, well, I'd really love to help young people be good at what I'd been good at. And so I did go into management, and that was sort of the last, 5 or 10 years of that career was really helping other young people understand how to invest money and, how to build businesses and things like that. So covered all the whole gambit from, the phone book to the boardroom. And it was an interesting adventure. All of that, I think now just sort of experience helps me to build the business that we're building here, both in Australia and in the US. Your collective wisdom over years, you just don't know how things are going to come back to help you, but invariably they do.
Yeah, you got as a kid, the hard ranch work, and then, like you said, you learn about money, finances, the markets, capital, and then your management role, learning how to lead people. And then, so did you go directly into Ranchbot after that, or what was your transition out of?
No, well, with my exit out of the financial markets, I decided I'd go and invest in a bunch of companies, and I really wanted to try and focus on 2 or 3 areas to find, the next thing I was going to do. And I decided agri-tech would be one area, and IoT, the Internet of Things, would, connected devices would be another area. And I sort of made 10 or 15 investments in startups, and I was sort of being a mentor and an angel investor to a bunch of companies. And I thought, look, I'm going to do this and see, what works and what doesn't work. And if I find something that I really, really like, I'll get fully dedicated into it. My co-founder of FarmBot, as it's known in Australia, Craig, was at a pitching event, and I was there as an investor and mentor, and he was talking about remote monitoring and control of his little farm down in the Southern Highlands of New South Wales, where he was actually monitoring water for truffles and some grapes and, half a dozen cows. Mm-hmm. And I sort of said, look, that's interesting, but, the model that you've got's not scalable. It's not going to, it can't work by erecting towers, involves the words that no rancher ever wants to hear. We'll send a technician. It's like, someone to leave the gate open and start a fire and, leave some rubbish lying around. So we got together. I mean, I sort of, to be honest, I resisted that for a little while and thought, I don't know if this guy knows what he's doing technically. I knew what we could do commercially, but I didn't know if he knew technically. And there was a guy, Mick Labinskis, that was sort of running the mentor program. He said, Coppo, everyone in Australia calls me Coppo. We abbreviate and shorten things because we're lazy. He said, Coppo, you've really got to go and have a coffee with this Craig guy. I think the two of you can really get something happening. And I resisted that for a while, and then eventually we did go and have a coffee one day, and well, as they say, the rest is history. We've now got over 80 people and, looking after, about 12,000 ranches and tens of millions of cows and sheep and, water for wildlife all around Australia and the US. So, yeah, it's just been interesting how I got into that. Obviously, I let the other investments that I made sort of drift to the sideline. Some of them are still going all right. And just started to invest my money and my time into FarmBot for the first 3 years. But I mean, it was Craig in the garage, with the Bunsen burner and the mortar and pestle. We were trying to work out what we could build that would be scalable, and then we sort of built the first 100 FarmBots. And I remember we agreed we wouldn't build the 101st one until they'd all been out in the pasture for a year, and we'd ironed out every possible kink and crease that we could, because I thought if we're going to scale this thing, we're sending these devices that talk to satellites and monitor water out into the middle of nowhere. I mean, we never want to see them again. We like them, but we don't want to see them. So they better be right. So the first 3 or 4 years was pretty painful. It was, Craig in the garage, me paying the bills. We didn't have any money. We were just sort of, bootstrapping and trying to work it out.
Mm-hmm. What'd you see in that? Would it just take you back to when you were a kid, the struggles of having to go and check that water or something? Like, what made you like, this is the next thing that I want to, or was it just him as a person you wanted to invest in?
Yeah, I mean,
over your other investments,
people had tried to solve this problem before, but all of the technology had sort of come out of the oil and gas sector, which meant it was big, it was expensive, and they were like trying to put square pegs in round holes. But there were some people that had really made serious inroads into it. A company called Observant had a good go, and they tried to go international with their water management and control. But we decided it had to be something we could send to a rancher in a box. They would open it, not read the instructions, because they wouldn't, right? It had to be intuitive. They had to be able to, attach it and install it in 5 minutes on their own, turn it on, and it had to work. And that was sort of the ground rules of, let's make a device that can come out of a box and meet those requirements. And you sort of say it and you think, oh, yeah, that's easy. But, hang on, but this thing needs to monitor water all the time in real time and only tell the rancher when there's a problem. And we've got to get a device talking to a satellite, and there's no power, so it's got to have its own power, and it's got to be, nature proof, and in Australia that's, that means, everything from wildfires to 120 degrees to, minus 20 to, cyclonic winds and hurricanes and, spiders, birds and, kangaroos. So we had to make it kangaroo proof and everything other. So, there was a lot of work went into that. But I knew there was a big problem to solve. I think that was the thing. I knew if we could solve this and solve it well, that was a massive opportunity. Mm-hmm. And I sit here today, 10 years later, thinking, wow, we've just sort of started now, we've just started. Because today, here in the US, probably right now as we're sitting here, there's 500,000 people, 500,000 people driving around to check water in agriculture that 95% of the time doesn't need checking for the 5% of times that it does. And that's happening every single day. So it's just got this huge embedded cost and that's sort of hidden in the job of ranching, and I've sort of had people say, Coppo, you're trying to steal my job. I'm like, no, I'm trying to give you choices, about how you could do things better and more productive and more efficiently in your operations. So I think it was the size of the prize to be able to do that, and also to be able to do it for really good people that I had an affinity with, that to be able to help ranchers be better. Because so often things in the supply chain are to the net benefit of, the retailer or the wholesaler or someone else. Ranchers who do all the hard work growing our food rarely get a real true benefit that only falls to their bottom line. And so that was a big inspiration for me to want to be part of that.
Yeah. Yeah, and like we said before, where I live and kind of in this area, everything's smaller and there's pretty good water. That we have tanks and creeks and live water, so we don't have to rely on that or kind of take it for granted, I guess. Also, but I've worked and went to my buddies' places and stuff out west, and that's like that is a whole deal. Like you got to drive around, check waters. You have pipelines, you have wells, you have windmills, you have solar wells, and that's a whole thing just to drive around. Like you said, it takes all day, a lot to. I know that the most technological thing I've heard was one guy was saying he had a really rough place, and it's really not that far from here, but you couldn't even drive to the water. You had to go. He'd take a Colt every day and ride it out there and check water, but he said, same as everybody else, we're trying to maximize our time, make the most amount of money, and all that, got other things to do. Well, he bought a drone and he just flies his drone over there. You don't make as many good horses, but it does save you a lot of time.
Yeah.
And that maybe your product could, benefit him and a lot of I'm sure there's a lot of people listening like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, innovation and how that works is an interesting thing, isn't it? I mean, sometimes we iterate how we've solved a problem and think that that's innovation. So, driving to check water, something most ranchers on the planet have done for the last 50 years. Before that, they were riding horses to check water. And, you've got this Henry Ford problem, his famous saying, if I'd asked them what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. So we didn't know we needed motor vehicles. And then, we didn't know we needed drones, and now we don't know that we need sensors in our water that can just tell us we've got a problem when we've got a problem. Because whilst drones are great and are going to have a lot of future in managing ranches and farms for automatically flying boundaries and checking fences and mustering cattle, gathering cattle automatically, there's some really good uses. Flying to check water is just really replacing the fundamentally flawed task at the moment of driving to check it. Because still 1 minute after you saw it, you still don't know what's happening. And so this world of Internet of Things or IoT, sensors in tanks, pumps, pipes, water, being able to put it all on an app for the rancher today so they can just know there's a problem when there's a problem. That's the sort of true leap of innovation that we're seeing at the moment. And the good news for ranchers is it's sort of, it's real, it's credible, it's affordable, and it makes a real impact. Whereas, some early iterations of technology, like the ones I mentioned, we'll go in, we'll pour concrete, we'll erect a tower, $100,000 later, you'll have a network that'll work 70% of the time to tell you about the water. You go, not so great.
What was it like in the early days? I know you said y'all were in the garage. On your side, being an investor, and you're coming from a world where I'm guessing that you accumulated a little bit of resources and money and stuff. Were you having to bet it all? I mean, were you pushing it all in on this company or?
No, I mean, I had other investments, was fortunate enough to do reasonably well out of my 20-year career in the stock market. So no, I didn't put it all on black and sort of hope with the roll of the dice that it would work out. But I made very material investments and, funded the company for a few years in those early days. And, the biggest single commitment was just time, was just putting in hours and hours. I come out of a, high-paying, corporate job, running billion-dollar enterprises. And, all of a sudden I'm in a startup, down at Staples getting the Post-it notes and, trying to look around, where's the IT guy when you need him, So it went back to basics, and that's always challenging. And just being totally under-resourced. But that was really, the first 3 to 5 years was all pretty tough. But, look, we made every mistake you can make as a startup, probably a few more. And, that's just sort of what makes it fun, makes it part of the journey and makes it worthwhile at the end of the day. As they say, it's not, it's the journey, not the destination that made us strong. We had a lot of good people come and we had a lot of good people go, people that got us from one phase of the business to the next phase and then they'd move on, whatever. And, but, look, it's been interesting but really challenging. I mean, solving hard problems, remote monitoring of things in really inhospitable areas at an affordable price in real time via satellites for ranchers. I mean, it's not everyone's cup of tea.
Yeah. Yeah, I was listening to somebody talk about money and stuff and jobs and different opportunities, and they said, I really like the person that says, what is the hardest way to make money? Like, what is the biggest problem? And then, if you succeed at it, you have no competition because it's so hard that most people are going to quit.
Yeah.
And you're able to, if you can push past that, it's going to come easy.
Well, I think I found something that's harder than ranching, Ranching's pretty hard, but ranch tech and agri-tech is pretty hard.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I have people giving me crap all the time about wealthy cowboy. Like those two words don't go together. Same as ranching and technology. Like you really disconnect those two. I know, I think with people my age, young people coming up, they're more open to technology. But even me, I know people, like I'm a big proponent. I use AI. Like I use technology a lot, but I'm also like, if I didn't have to use technology, I would be fine with that too. Like I would just as soon not have any. But it is a really good, useful tool that I think a lot of people don't take the time to learn anything about and how it can improve your life, and it kind of holds them back. It's funny. Every brand out there claims they've built the ultimate Western performance shirt, but most of them are more involved in other industries. Finally, there's one that actually is different. Introducing Horn Knot. One detail changes the game. This has literally never been done before. A patent-pending hidden zipper pocket with an extendable lens cloth, so you can clean your shades or your phone without untucking your shirt. It's simple, smart, and practical. I also like that you can fit your phone in the front pocket. And here's what I love. Horn Knot kept their designs classic, the most traditional pearl snaps you'll find anywhere. Great colors and vintage pocket designs. These are the same shirts I wear to work in, and you've probably seen me wearing them right here on the podcast. They even built a ladies line, not fake pockets or bad fits, but real Western shirts built to flatter and function. My wife Shady shows and works in these shirts, and there's nothing else like them.
Get yours today and save 20% with code Crockett at hornknot-brkwy.com. Horn Knot and Breakaway. Learn more at hornknot-brkwy.com.
No, 100%. I actually, I've thought a lot about this over the last, 10 years. I think, ranchers and farmers get a pretty bad rap for not being innovators and not being, early adopters of things. I mean, at the end of the day, the change in this business has been huge and continues to be. But I think what most people in the city probably miss is, a rancher's day starts about 4 a.m. and finishes, a few hours after the sun goes down. It's not a walk in at 9, walk out at 5, and all the problems disappear after those hours. As a rancher, you're dealing with all of the challenges. Every rancher is a boss. They're thinking about all the inputs. They're thinking about the fuel, the corn, the feed, the chemicals, the meds, the preg check. It never ends, right? Mm-hmm. And so if someone like me comes along and says, hey, here's some new technology, you should really give it a go. I mean, exactly in what spare 5 minutes of my day would you like me to do that? It's like I've never met a rancher with time on their hands. I've never met one with a bottom on the to-do list. Mm-hmm. So part of the mismatch between innovation and ranching is finding things that have a real impact, fast. A lot of technology can be, do this and change your practices, and in 3 to 5 years you'll see a difference, of 5%. You go, well, or, put this on your water and tomorrow your life will be different. So a lot of people sort of say to me, hey, Copper, how, geez, you guys have done so well scaling the business, and how is that and why is that? And I was like, I think we can just fit into a rancher's really busy life easy, and the day after they install it, their life is better.
They got a reward out of it.
Yeah, they got a reward. They're saving water. They're saving the animals. They're not having to drive up and down the dirt road, But for them to realise that as well, the problem we solve is hidden in the job, And when I say to ranchers, so, how much time do you spend driving to check things that don't need checking? They sort of look at me like, what are you talking about? So, down the freeway, on the dirt road, open the gate, close the gate, up the hill, open the gate, close the gate, down the road, open the gate, close, check the water, then all the way back, open the gate, close it. And it's like, yeah, I get it. I'm like, well, 1 minute after you did that, you didn't know you still don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
And now, 10 years on, I've probably seen more water infrastructure than any human on the planet, and yet I've still never seen a problem happen in front of my eyes. Somewhere Murphy and Ag got together and had a chat and said, hey, let's make sure any problem on the ranch only ever happens when the ranch is as far away as they can be.
On vacation
Friday night on their wife's birthday, or on the first day of their vacation, when the phone rings and oh, there's water all over the road down here, what do you want me to do? It's like, so, it's the immediacy of this has been key to our success in innovating. But the good news is there's a hell of a lot of other really great technology now that's coming for ranching and farming that I think is going to get real traction over the next decade.
Mm-hmm. Talk about your product. Like you said, you made 100 of them. Y'all sent them out. How did that come back? Was it did it hold up pretty good? Did y'all have to change a lot from the initial offering, the initial product?
Yeah, I think the one that we built 100 of was actually FarmBot Mark IV. So the first, Mark 1, Mark 2, Mark 3 never really saw the light of day. They were ideas. We'd build 2 or 3, they'd fail, we'd iterate. So the first one that actually became a commercial product was the 4th generation. And as I said here today, we're on the 7th generation and we're planning for the 8th. A little bit, think about how you have an iPhone, what are we on now, 17 or something. So same sort of logic, let's build it better, stronger, faster. But yeah, we knew when those 100 went out and the farmers started to call saying, hey, actually, this thing's really good, you better send us a few more. We thought, okay, we're on a winner here. This could be the start of something. Interesting what happened after that, but was people, you got to be careful what problems you solve because you make other problems. And people started ringing saying, look, this is great, but you're messing with 50 years of rainfall records. And we're like, huh? What do you mean? It's like, well, the rain gauge is on the post right near the water storage out in the back pasture. And now we're only driving out there 1 day a week, not 3 days a week. Well, you're ruining our 50 years of rainfall records. Oh, damn. So we built an electronic rain gauge that would plug into the back of the farm bot. And we said, well, what if we could now tell you your rain without you having to go there? You have even better rainfall records and you won't have to drive to check the water. And so that second phase of solving the problem then really accelerated, and we started selling, 50 or 100 monitors a month, and people started to say, hey, this thing tells your rainfall and monitors your water, and that was a really key decision point for us that sort of allowed us to accelerate. And then over the last 5 or 6 years, we've just continued to iterate more and more and more things that talk to FarmBot or Ranchbot as it is today. And I think at last count, there's now something like 18 different things that talk to Ranchbot. So it's like become the iPhone of water monitors, Started with water monitoring. Now we do water pressure, water flow. We turn pumps on and off remotely. We can monitor the weather and rainfall and diesel fuel and liquid fertilizer. So, it sort of grew, as I said, solve one problem, make a bunch of others. But,
and kind of walk through just that initial Ranchbot, FarmBot, just the basic system. Like, how does it work? What exactly? Just a description of the product.
Yeah, so we build hardware. FarmBot's built in Australia for Australia. Ranchbot's built in Texas here in Richardson. We have a manufacturing facility. So it's a American-made, Texan-made product for this market. It's a standalone device that, again, has its own power. It's powered by batteries and the sun, communicates directly with satellite and can monitor up to 15 different things at once. And the things it's primarily monitoring is water storages, tanks, pumps, pipes, and weather and things around that ilk. You can attach cameras to it these days and see what's happening in the back pasture without having to go there. Or when I get a leak, the device saying, you've got a leak, you need to go and fix it, you can take a photo and check it out and see what you're going to fix. So the device has a hierarchy of people. You can get a text message or an email and it'll tell you when you've got a problem, If that's 2 o'clock in the morning, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. But if you've got, 500 head of black Angus out in the middle of somewhere and it's going to be 100 degrees today, you'd prefer to go and fix it at 3 in the morning than have them sit there all day. Of course, if you went there yesterday, you may not go back for 2 or 3 days. So there's now a lot of science and a lot of research done by, great universities, the Texas A&Ms and, other research universities in Nebraska State, UC Davis, people we're working with these days about the impact of water deprivation and heat stress on animals. And it's not, the cow was without water for, a day and it'll be okay tomorrow. So no, the cow was out without water for a day. It's going to take a week or 10 days to recover from that before it gets back to proper rumination and proper growth again. If it was 2 days, it might take a month. If it was 3 days and it was still alive, it's never going to be the same cow. And if it had a calf inside of it, that calf will never be the same calf. So this appreciation of water, both as an asset that we need to safeguard and look after, and of its impact in livestock, is huge. Often misunderstood, the amount of shrinkage and things you can have in your herd if they're left without water for a period of time.
Yeah, water, even more important than feed probably.
Yeah, definitely. Cows can go without feed for a few days and they'll get over it. Cows can't go without water for long. So look, the device is like that. We send it out and we dispatch everything here from Houston. We've got a big warehouse facility there where we send things out. Ranchers can install it on their own in 5 minutes. We have a support team that's all second or third generation ranchers. So if they need help doing it, they can call someone that lives and works and understands ranching. and get help. But literally, our rule was if they can't install it on their own in 10 minutes, turn it on and it works, then don't send it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of been in our DNA.
And then, so what was it like when you decided to expand outside of Australia?
Yeah, well, I started, Australia was starting to look pretty good, and we're on, 2,500 ranches down there. And I actually got a call from a guy out of California, an old guy called John Eade, and his associate Ken Griffin, and they had been watching from afar what we were doing and sort of said, look, there's this thing you've got going on over there, we think there's a good use for it here. And I'd sort of, I'd been thinking about the United States and for a while, and I said, well, how about I send you over a bit of kit and you can set it up and, let me know how it goes. And so we started off real simple like that, and we sent them 3 or 4 devices. They gave it, said, hey, this thing's actually really good. They started telling their neighbours, and the neighbours sort of said, hey, can we get some of these things? So then eventually I got on a plane and flew over and sort of met with them. And, John was a 80-year-old war veteran guy, hard old bloke, but really nice. And he said, Andrew, I drive 50 miles every day to go and check water. And, you've just saved me. I don't have to do that anymore. Like, this is the best thing that's happened in ranching in 50 years. And I'm like, wow, if an 80-year-old guy who only previously ever had a flip phone can tell me that I'm changing his life, then there's work for me to do here. Mm-hmm. So I started coming and going a fair bit, and we established the manufacturing facility here in Richardson and started building Ranchbot here. Hired our first person back in 2024. So yeah, and then I moved here 18 months ago, and now I live and breathe and work here in Texas. So it's been a bit of a journey. We had to really think about it. Didn't have to change the device that much. We adapted a few things to deal with cold, because in Australia we do hot really good, mm-hmm. but we don't do cold that well. Mm-hmm. So we changed the battery so it could operate in minus 30 degrees, and we had to change how the device charges itself in the sun, because you can't lithium batteries don't like to be charged when it's cold. Mm-hmm. So a few tweaks and things, and obviously a bit of terminology changing.
Yeah. Yeah. And how about that? Like, how does that work? Like, with the solar, how long can it go? Like, if it is winter time and it's cold and the sun's not out, like, how long can it go like that?
Yeah, we test things pretty brutally in our machinery, shops, and got about 20 odd engineers these days. So we put them through the test pretty hard. We'd like to think they can operate in complete darkness for 3 or 4 days, and just suboptimal light, can be a week or so. Look, the first devices that we built, back 7 or 8 years ago, most of them are still out in the pasture operating to this day. They're probably paid for themselves 50 times over. So yeah, we're very mindful of the heat and the cold and, challenging times. Mm-hmm. But yeah, some iterations of the device that we're working on here in the US now, including a device to monitor water heaters and give ranchers a heads up that there could be an icing event, telling you, look, there's an icing event, you should come here and break ice now, is sort of, the sort of innovations and things that we're now thinking about, because I haven't met a rancher that enjoys going to break ice yet.
Oh, yeah, that's the worst. Which we only get it here. And you probably, I don't know if you've experienced it yet or not, but like maybe a week, a year or something like that, we have to deal with that very much. But
yeah. I live down here in Clear Fork, and I've got the Edwards Ranch is straight over the road, so I look straight out onto the cows there, and in the morning in winter I'd go down there and check their water, and had to break ice for them a few times last winter. So yeah, even though I live in the city, it feels like I live in the country.
Yeah, that is a cool thing that I think people don't realize. I like Fort Worth. I don't know, I'm biased over it, but because it like there are still some decent sized ranches. I mean, not huge compared to Australia, but decent sized ranches just right here, and you can see the downtown Fort Worth. It's pretty cool, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I met a gentleman last night, and he was telling me that he used to go fishing on the river, on the Trinity at Edwards Ranch, and they had a rope swing off a tree. And, he's like telling me the whole back. I'm like, oh wow, it's like a suburb of Fort Worth now. But I love it here for that ranching heritage, which is really, really important to me. I feel like pretty vocal about us needing to maintain the culture of ranching and be respectful of where we came from, and sometimes I feel like people think innovation is in some way disrespectful of culture or the code or, whatever. And I don't feel that. I think it's just a stepping stone to the next version of where ranching's got to go. But we can be very, very respectful of where it's been, In Australia, I grew up watching, John Wayne movies and American cowboy movies. We didn't have Australian cowboy movies. So when I'm driving through Texas hearing the names of the towns of, that I watched on TV in cowboy and Indian movies, I'm like, hey, this is really where it all began.
Yeah. Of course, you got the man from Snowy River down there. Everybody loves that over here. So.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an Australian part of, folklore and legend and history. But yeah, I just feel like here, especially in Texas, the legacy of ranchers and the DNA of ranchers in the whole community and economy is really, really important. And I want to be respectful of that. And I love being part of it. It's great.
On that note, how was it coming over here, and introducing that to ranchers around here? Was it tough? Were they kind of skeptical of it, or how did that go? If you didn't hear Ben Hell's story on episode 69, you need to check it out. He's been earning trust in the cattle industry one handshake at a time since 1995 at Western Livestock. Western Livestock is proud to be family owned and operated now with 5 locations: Oklahoma City, Woodward, Comanche, and Waurika, Oklahoma, and also Knoxville, Iowa. They're proud to do business the Western way with honesty, integrity, and a handshake that still means something. You can join them ringside or stream their sales from wherever you are. Western Livestock, where a handshake is their word, cattle are money, and timing is everything. If you're looking to buy or sell, contact Ben Hale at 940-631-BEEF. That's 940-631-2333. Check them out on Facebook or westernlivestock.com.
Yeah, it was certainly pretty tough. I mean, guys like John Eade gave me the inspiration to think, if I can get an 80-year-old to do it and tell me it's the best thing you've seen in 50 years, then I've got some hope. But yeah, look, it had been pretty tough, and I understood that. I mean, technology, especially in the early 2000s, the first sort of wave of ag tech, a lot of it had really overpromised and underdelivered, and so ranchers were rightfully cynical about, what people said was possible because they'd been burnt by snake oil salespeople before, and so we've had to tread reasonably carefully and really understand. But I think the big advantage for us is that, if Ranchbot was test driven in Australia, people know that's a tough country. It's hard, it's big, it's rough, it's hot. And so I think being an Aussie has sort of helped, and someone that grew up in and around farming and ranching and understands that life has been very helpful. But look, there's still plenty of people that are cynical about technology, that feel in some way that it's disrespectful to how they ranch, and all the culture, and that's why I'm at odds to say this is critical for your future of your businesses to be innovating. And obviously I think I'm in my mid-50s. I think I'm probably the last generation that sort of wears working 100-hour work weeks as a badge of honour, and a lot of ranchers tell me, Coppo, I really would love my kids to be more involved in the ranch. And I'm sort of say, well, look, your kids are going to want to do it differently than you, as sure as you did from your old man. So you're going to have to think about that, because they've got an app for everything else. And if you can give them an app for the ranch and help them run it, I mean, they're going to hang around. They're going to be here. They're going to want to work smarter, not harder. So just be mindful of that, and that doesn't mean, again, that we're disrespectful. It doesn't mean you won't have to do your share of tough, long days. But, it does mean that you can have greater work-life balance. And, we see technology, giving more time for roping and more time for hunting and for the family and for the church. So, we've got to innovate. We've got to progress our things, and especially in the macroeconomic environment that is, how are we going to feed everyone on the planet? We've only got so much land and so much pasture and so much water, and yet the population keeps growing all the time, and the demand for our product, especially great growing US beef, is just going through the roof, at the moment, at all-time highs, but demand's continued to increase. So, cynical, yes. Are there still 500,000 ranchers driving around today checking things? Yes. But progressively they'll see their neighbours and hear from other ranchers that say, hey, you don't need to do that anymore. There is a better way, and it actually works really well, and you get more time to work on all the things you should work on, or with the family, or or to do other important things. So innovation and adoption is a process, and sometimes it just takes time.
I bet a lot of people are still driving around now. They're just checking the Ranchbot.
Well, in Australia, where we've got big ranchers that own 400 or 500 devices, they have it set up, in their offices, and they've now got new jobs, which is people monitoring the monitors. They're automating all their pumps, their fuel, their pivots. So having a control center for the ranch is a thing, and that is going to go that way. And a lot of it's just on your cell phone or with your team. You can go and sort the problems that are problems first, and then think of what else do we need to do today? What are the other most high priority items? So, yeah, it's going to create new jobs. It's going to create, new skill sets. 20 years ago, podcasts weren't a thing. Search engine optimization wasn't a thing, and neither was AI. AI back then meant artificial insemination, right? Now it's AI 2.0.
Yeah.
So just this is the world we live in, just constantly evolving and innovating. But I'm really, really excited about where ranch tech is at now, and that we can deliver really good solutions that make ranchers' lives better.
Do you see in the close future, I'm sure it's going to innovate over time, but in the close future, do y'all have any plans of expansion on different types of devices, different pieces of tech, and then also expanding more worldwide besides Australia and America?
I think I'd have my work cut out for me here in the United States for the next couple of years. But, I sort of think about ranching in three sort of areas. I think about soil and pasture, and there's some companies doing really great work about assessing soil and pasture growth, and you've some of them here in Texas. You've got companies like Earth Optics that are doing, soil assessment and everything, which is all part of carbon sequestration projects and understanding how your pastures are going to grow. Then in the middle, you've sort of got infrastructure, which is sort of what we do, things we can turn on, turn off, automate on the ranch. And then there's the individual animal, and that could be individual animals through tags. It could be through virtual fencing, monitoring and controlling the individual animal. So we're in this sort of infrastructure space in the middle, but we're working really closely with the leaders in pasture and soil and the leaders in individual animal, because no rancher is going to want to have 7 apps to run the show, right? So we're trying to collaborate and be, good partners in business to deliver solutions that are ultimately the things that the rancher's going to want to know about the most.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some really interesting things happening there. Some great companies here in Texas and others that are from around the world that are part of these sort of collaborations as this innovation ecosystem sort of evolves.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it with AI cameras, identifying cattle, some of it with, assessing, the animal's health. A cow that doesn't drink, I mean, that's the first tell, that it's not well. So if we could give our ranchers a list of, here are the cows that did not drink yesterday, you probably need to go and find them or get them away from the other cows. I mean, that'd be a really, really valuable thing to be able to do.
Yeah, there's a feedlot by us down there that has, I don't know, I can't remember what it's called, but something like that monitors. They have the tag and the EID tag in their ear, and then it scans them. I know when they drink, when they come to the water, and it's in a feedlot setting, so it's pretty controlled. But same deal. It has and I want to say it could be even feed, but maybe not. I can't remember. But it scans their tag, whether they're coming to feed or water or not, and then that way, when your pen rider goes out there, this calf hasn't come to water. And you can look at it and assess it with your eyes, whether maybe something messed up with the monitor or maybe that calf's actually sick, or go ahead and get it early enough that you're actually going to do something. Yeah. So that's pretty cool. And it goes with what you're saying. I never would have thought, something like that. Or when somebody told me you could virtually put a collar on a cow and keep it in a certain spot, that's very, it's like, whoa, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And, but yours, like the Ranchbot, I can see that, but like controlling an animal like that, it's a whole different deal.
Yeah. I mean, again, there's so many of those things are all sort of coming together now about the cow and the water and the feed and the weight and the health of the animal and everything. As I said, I think, I've done nothing other than this for the last 12 years of my life now. I mean, I think what we're going to see happen over the next 3 years is going to be twice as much as all happened in the last decade. Just because there's just the technology is coming together, it's moving at speed. AI, machine learning, satellite comms, the availability of communications in remote areas. All of our devices are satellite driven because we just decided the future of comms was going to be satellite. So just have devices that can work anywhere on the planet. And the evolution of what's happening in that space is really interesting. So we use two American companies now, Viasat and Globalstar. Globalstar monitor every iPhone on the planet, and Viasat put Wi-Fi in aeroplanes. So if we need to turn a pump on and off remotely in the middle of West Texas desert from my cell phone, I can turn pumps on and off here. I can turn them on and off in the middle of Australia right here, right now, or open and close a gate, open and close a valve. Think about all the things we could be able to do without having to go there, and then know that actually happened, know that my cattle are drinking and how much they're drinking, know which cattle didn't drink. I mean, the potential for technology in this space to make ranchers' lives more efficient is, at a whole new level.
Yeah. And it's fun to be out on the ranch and doing things, feel like you're, accomplishing something. But I can just imagine the deal about this whole show is making more money, making more profit in your business or on the ranch or both. And being able to do that, I mean, I've had a guy on about the carbon credits and the revenue that can provide, and using that, they, hand in hand use the virtual fencing. And also, if you do that, you're going to have to put more water infrastructure in where your deal comes in, and all in to be, like you said, more efficient and make more money, be more profitable on the ranch. And I mean, I think we're gonna have to do that, to make it anymore.
Yeah. If you're in the business of ranching with a view to making a profit and building a business, innovation is not an option. It's an obligation, and you can't be last, because if you are, you probably won't be in business. So, look, we hear from, we've now got 12,000 people on our platform. We hear that from the vast majority of them, they get a return on their investment inside 6 months. And depending, of course, on the size of the ranch, we look after people that just own 10 cows, but they're never there, so they need to keep an eye on the water. And we look after the biggest ranch in the world and a creek in Australia, millions of acres. Different ROI metrics for each one, But the average sort of rancher, we think we're saving about $30,000 to $40,000 a year. I mean, that's a material, saving.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the problem is there's no line in the P&L that says driving to check stuff that doesn't need checking, right? So the line in the P&L is gas, labour, wear and tear on motor vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, this is where we end up in the really, really tricky area, which I always love to ask ranchers, what is your hourly rate? And they sort of look at me and go, what are you talking about? I'm like, well, what is your hourly rate? It's like, I'm a rancher. I don't have a rate. I was like, well, okay, well, let's think. If a day worker is worth $20 an hour, how many multiples of that are you worth? 3, 5, 8, 10? Because that's what your time is worth to be doing that job.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we think about that and think, quantifying the time, the effort, the money, the opportunity cost of not driving around to check. Last year, I think we surveyed 700 customers, and on average, they said they were checking the water about 3.2 times a week before our device and about 1.1 or 1.2 times after they had it. So that's like a 60% reduction in that cost. And then you save water, and then you save shrinkage, and then you get the time back to do all the other jobs. So, financially, I know we're saving some big ranchers, literally hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
But for your average rancher, it's in the tens of thousands. So where else are they going to go and get savings that are pretty immediate like that in their business? I mean, it's hard. When cows are $3,000 a head, I mean, the one thing I don't want to do is I don't want to leave them without water. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to, like you said, to quantify our time. Like most people never hear of that in this industry, because you're just working all the time, you're never done. But also just especially, where your device is going to come in the most handy is going to be in rough, remote areas that is very hard on a $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 vehicle or a $20,000 buggy or whatever you're using. I mean, just the wear and tear and the tires and the fuel. And I mean, just all of that without the time, I could see a huge return in. Willow Creek Cattle Company develops and breeds hundreds of heifers a year for their customers. They can buy, develop, and AI heifers to the bull of your choice. They're located in Northeast Kansas in the heart of the Flint Hills. So they can also start and grow your grass cattle. The U.S. cow herd is currently at the lowest inventory ever recorded, and with these record high calf prices, Willow Creek Cattle Company can provide a turnkey supply of AI bred heifers to help you rebuild your herd. Give them a call for all your backgrounding and heifer development needs, 620-344-2795.
Yeah. It's huge, and you guys do love driving big trucks.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're just getting more expensive, and so yeah, like you said, like what is the cost of checking something that doesn't need to be checked?
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the most epiphanies of when we say it, and then you really actually have to think about it. Like I do drive to check things that don't need checking. We justify it, of course, by we're going to go and put out some salt and some mineral, and we're going to check the fence, and we want to talk to the cows and check on them. So all these other jobs, they still need doing. The problem is, and you can go and do them. The problem is we don't say we're driving to do those other jobs. 99% of the time we say we're driving to check the water. And so when you remove the need to check the water, you can go and do the other jobs whenever you want, or whenever they're the highest priority jobs on your never-ending to-do list.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just about reprioritizing your resources and your time to think more about how I can run a more efficient operation. And, the feedback we get from ranchers is just, why didn't I do this 10 years ago?
Yeah.
Most of them are just annoyed with themselves that they didn't do it before. And, we just say, look, it's better late than never,
Mm-hmm. You've got a super interesting background. You've done a lot of cool things, been around the world, done different jobs from the ranch to the stock market to starting a company, investor. What's some advice you would give to a young person today?
Well, I mean, if you're going to get into innovation or technology, make sure you truly understand the problem that you're solving. You know, we still see a lot of people, you know, trying to look for a problem from a solution that they made up. So, you know, the biggest lesson I think we've got from Ranchbot evolution is spend more time with ranchers. I mean, I've done 100,000 miles on the road here in the last 18 months, and I'm not talking about down the 35. I've been on the dirt roads and the backcountry and met with ranchers on their place to hear and look and understand the problems that they've got so that I can be better inform my team and engineers about the sort of solutions we really need to make. So I think, you know, if you're going to be in innovation or an entrepreneur, really, really understand the problem, deeply understand it, spend the time, research it, investigate it, talk to the people who've got it, and then talk to them about what a solution might look like. Again, you've got to be careful because, again, it's that old Henry Ford problem, you know, you've got to make sure they know, because most people don't even know that remote water monitoring is a thing, and most people don't even know that driving around to check it is a problem until they've solved it. Mm-hmm. And when they've solved it, they go, it's like an epiphany. It's like, wow. So in business, I think understanding your customer really intimately and understanding the problem you're solving for them really intimately, and don't think you solved it and then just walk away. It just goes on forever. I will never, ever stop meeting ranchers and talking to them about how could I do this better? Is there another version of this? If you had, now that you understand how it works, what else would you do? And that's led us to an evolution of other products and other things that, again, are helping them be more efficient.
Yeah. And in starting that, I mean, did you see the scalability of it, I'm sure, of just like, if we could do this and do this right, there's just a huge market for it?
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, obviously in the early days, I was only thinking about Australia and thinking about the vastness of the properties. You know, you could own 1 million acres in Australia and you've only got 4 or 5 people there looking after it all, you know. I mean, it's a lot of land to cover. In the US, the problem here is different. The intensity of infrastructure is so huge. You know, in Australia, we're targeting 45,000 ranches. In Texas, there's 76,000 registered ranch businesses. Now, many of them will be small. That is true. But all of them will have a well and a pump and a pipe and some drinkers and some cows. And, you know, so they've all got problems to solve. It's just a question of the magnitude and the size and the availability of those things. So, yeah, I mean, the scale of, you know, initially I thought America, you know, you could do some back of the envelope. Oh, we've got 25 million cows in Australia. You know, there's 80 million cows in America. So, you know, we're talking 3 or 4 times. I think the market here is 30 or 40 times bigger than Australia because we manage and control infrastructure. So, yeah, really excited about that. I get asked if we've got some trials going on in Paraguay, Uruguay, Brazil. You know, these problems are global. We're all going to have to deal with the challenges of creating sustainable and resilient food supply on our planet with weather volatility. You know, no matter what your thoughts are on climate change or not, one thing is sure, the weather volatility, you know, hotter hot, wetter wet in faster turnaround times is definitely something that we are seeing. And I saw, you know, the head of grazing lands from Texas A&M last week showing the standard deviations of weather, you know, around the place. As we know, we had the tragedy in Kerr County, you know, 3 hours with a massive flood. Of course, 3 hours to the west, I've got ranches down there that have had 1 inch of rain in a year. How do you manage the business if you don't know if you could have a flood 1 month and a drought 3 months later? You know, I'm sort of beginning to use this. We know what a flash flood is. I'm beginning to think we need to talk about flash droughts, you know, things that happen, the volatility of weather. It's like weather whiplash. So my thinking is, you know, you need data to make better decisions. You need to inform things. Back in the day, maybe your dad and the old time, it's like pull out the pocketbook. Well, I think it looks a little bit like 78. What did we do in 78? It's like, well, I don't really remember 78. So what about if we just had the data and some algorithms telling us, look, based on all known inputs at this moment in time, here's the optimum grazing period in this pasture, or here's the decisions we could make to graze longer or shorter, or, put out more water or buy more cattle. I think we need to get every other sector on the planet's become really data-centric, and ranching needs to sort of take a leaf out of that book and think, hang on, data and information is our friend. It's not something we should be scared of. We should get it, we should embrace it, and we should use it to make better decisions.
Yeah, for sure. I could see that. I mean, just in my little operation, it's like, when's the last time it rained this much? Everybody, like every change of the season, it's like the first time it's ever happened, but it's not. We go through it every year, and to think back of what can we learn from our past mistakes, our past, of doing things right, what's the best way to do it going forward. And it's like, it is. We don't keep good enough books, good enough data to really take advantage of that.
Yeah, no, 100%.
What are some, in all your travels and all your ventures, do you have any like books, resources, or anything like that you've used that are just good in life, business in general?
Well, I'm a big. There are many great books being written, and there's nowadays there's many great podcasts and audio books, and great advice you can have. I mean, but through my career, I guess I think critical, and also for your listeners, find good mentors, find people around you that can have had that lived experience, and listen really good when they're talking to you. I think nothing beats lived experience. I don't need to be told by Bill Gates how to run a business or whatever. He's got some awesome views about it, and I'm happy to read his book. But I tell you, I could just learn just as much from, a rancher in West Texas telling me about how he survived and what he did in his business, and, how that evolved. So I'm just a big believer in having great mentors and staying close to real people and their real lived experience. Not all of them might have written a book, but a lot of them have got great lessons.
Yeah. How do you who do you look up to in your kind of weird situation now, ag technology? Is there anybody ahead of you in that, or you just can you just apply lessons from other people's experiences, like across, like maybe not in the same business, in the same industry, but just apply their thinking to what you're doing?
Yeah. Well, I mean, ag tech, even though it's been around a long time, there's not that many companies in our sort of space. But, I do look at my peers in the areas that are doing similar things that we are, and the challenges that they're facing. And, thankfully we all get on and have good conversations and share our challenges and our issues together. But yeah, I guess for me, it's just more about the broader collective of life experience, both in and out of work, and all of the challenges that have come with that. I think we infinitely better from learning from our mistakes than our successes. So you've got to have failed quite a few times to sort of know how to succeed. That's been my lived experience. But as I sit here today, we're growing a business that's sort of been doubling every year for the last 3 years. We're on a trajectory to become $1 billion company. I don't even question whether we will or not. It's a matter of time. We're going to employ, 50, 60, 70 people, here in Texas and across the US. And we're going to change ranching on the planet for the better for the people that grow our food. I mean, I feel like I'm just privileged to be able to do that every day. Who gifted me that opportunity to be able to do such a worthy thing, and to give people time and peace of mind. I mean, seriously, like, what are the two things humans we're always searching for? We never have enough time, and we're always worried about all the things in our life. So when I hear, as I do most frequently from our customers, that you've given me time and peace of mind, I just think, wow, what a privilege. How lucky am I to be able to do this.
Yeah, that is cool. What do you think one skill, if you could just narrow it down to one skill for somebody to work on that's super important just for success in life, what do you think that one skill would be?
I'm going to break the convention and tell you that there's got to be two things and they have to sort of go hand in glove. But you've just persistence, just an unfailing will to succeed and just not give up has to be met with passion for what you're going to do. You just have to be able to join those two things together, in my view. I would rate passion for something over anything. I mean, here I try and employ people that are in ranching, have ranching background. They did the FFA deal. They got up at 4 a.m, brushed the cows, did the thing, and did it relentlessly with a pursuit to try and win, and be good at something. You have to have that tenacity and that persistence. And then you have to be passionate about what you're going to do. It doesn't matter what you're going to do. If you're going to sell cars or rope cows or, be a pro surfer, if you're not passionate about it and you're not prepared to do more than the average person, why do you deserve to succeed more than the average person? So you've got to join those things together and just relentlessly pursue them in the face of all adversity and everyone telling you it won't work. And I've been told by thousands of people this won't work, and that we won't be able to scale and all the things that could go wrong, but most of those people are sitting in a lounge chair doing not a lot.
Yeah. I've had that answer, both those answers a few times before, of being able to persistence, of being able to be told no a bunch and that it won't work, like you said, and keep going and keep being confident about it. And then on the backside, you've got to be passionate about it to have that persistence, like you said. Yeah.
Those things are definitely hand in glove. It's hard to have one and not the other and still get where you need to go.
And I always wrap up with the same question, and I'm curious to your answer because you're new here. Your favorite restaurant?
My favorite restaurant. Well, I've got a few, and I've had a really good guide, for where I should go around town. Look, I live in Clear Fork, so I probably find myself at B&B having a steak more often than not.
Yeah, that's we've ate there before. I've actually got a buddy that lives there in Clear Fork.
Yeah, right.
There's a lot of options up here.
Yeah, no, that's great. I'm never going to go short of a steak, but I'm still not sure it can beat the one I cook at home myself.
Oh yeah, I get that answer a lot too, and I feel the same. If you can get some good beef at home, and you cook it and all that, I don't know, it just tastes better.
Yeah, fortuitously, I spend a lot of time on ranches who are also always keen for me to have one of their steaks. Or more often than not, they tell me it's the neighbour's steak. But
how can people? I don't know if you have a social media presence at all. How can people reach you or reach your company and read more and learn more about your company?
Yeah, well, I mean, Ranchbot HQ is down here in Fort Worth. And yeah, we're on Instagram and Facebook and all the usual places, or our websites, ranch-bot.com.
Yeah, cool. Well, y'all go check it out. I know a lot of y'all listening could definitely benefit for this, and I always talk about buying back your time, and I know we don't think about time like that, but to be able, like he said, to go do more important things, to spend more time with your family, you can't hardly put a value on that. And so y'all go check out Ranchbot, and we'll see y'all next time. As a business owner, Google reviews can make or break you. The problem, happy customers don't always speak up, and the few bad ones can drag you down fast. That's why we built Review Wizard, a free tool that makes getting 5-star reviews simple. Just post a QR code in your business, customers can scan it, and in seconds they leave you a review. But that's just the start. Review Wizard helps you respond to customers automatically, share reviews straight to social media, and even add them to your website to build instant trust. Every new review boosts your Google SEO ranking, making it easier for new customers to find you online. And if you want to take it to the next level, our AI upgrade can filter out the bad reviews before they hit your page and engage with your customers so you don't lose them. That means more good reviews, less damage control, and stronger relationships. The best part, the base version is completely free. No catch. Just click the link below and start turning your happy customers into your best marketing team today.